us to understand what would that mean for the candidates. Let's start from the Republican Party. Mr. Andrews, if, do you think, is there any possibility, Mr. Trump, who is now the leading candidate, gonna sweep these 11 states on Super Tuesday?
So it's definitely a possibility, but believe it or not, there's still a way forward for just about every candidate still in the race. Of course, if current polling holds and Donald Trump sweeps the Super Tuesday states, then the race may be his. However, if Ted Cruz is able to win his home state of Texas and perhaps Oklahoma or Arkansas, he can make his case. And certainly if Marco Rubio is able to be the consensus, second place finisher across the board and maybe pull in a state like Tennessee or Arkansas or Oklahoma, he certainly has a path forward with his ability to perhaps win Florida and Ohio on March 15th. So yes, Donald Trump is leading. He's currently at 40% in the polls nationwide. However, there's still a path forward for a couple of other candidates.
I see. Mr. Dunham, though, you got a lot of different kind of states going on. You got liberal states. You've got very conservative states. You also got almost central, in a way, northeastern states. So is Mr. Trump going to be able to have them all? If he does have the majority, would that mean he's likely to be the ideal candidate for the Republican Party?
The key when you're thinking of the Republican primaries is that voters are much more conservative. Massachusetts, yes, it is a liberal state in the Northeast, but it's sort of a blue-collar, independent type voter, and that is really a Trump voter in the primary. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Trump win Massachusetts with the opposition split, with John Kasich and Marco Rubio splitting the opposition there. What's really important is that the momentum that comes out of today, and I'm assuming that Donald Trump will win most or almost all of the states, is what happens in the next 2 weeks. There are actually more primaries and caucuses in the next 2 weeks than there are today. And there are some big states where Donald Trump will have challenges. Ohio, where John Kasich, the governor, is running against him, Marco Rubio's home state of Florida. But if Trump gets momentum today, he'll be hard to stop.
Before we got to talk about all of the other states for the second round, let's focus on the Super Tuesday. One state, of course, you're extremely familiar with, Texas. Mr. Donald Trump has criticized almost every of those most respected, at least by the Texans, coming from the Bush family, including Mr. Cruz these days. Will he be able to win the hearts and minds?
Well, Donald Trump is doing the opposite of what George Bush did in 2000 when he won. He's getting pieces of all of the parts of the Republican Party. Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, is the favorite, but he's getting the votes mostly of the religious conservatives and the Tea Party conservatives, and Donald Trump is drawing from all parts of the party. So I think Texas may end up being closer than people think.
Mr. Schwartz, you've been nodding your head. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about Donald Trump as well, because this is really a phenomenon. And I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Schwartz, that the Clinton campaign has already held, according to New York Times, several inside conferences about how to deal with Donald Trump, this very possible rival.
Absolutely. In fact, every successful campaign in waging their war through the primaries definitely looks at the front runners on the other side so they know what tactic to use. I think we saw that really on display last weekend when Hillary Clinton completely sweep the South Carolina Democratic primary, where in her speech following her win, she really focused on Donald Trump, not calling him out specifically, but a very good line that was played in the package coming into our piece today was that America is great, but we must make it whole again. And this is sort of her pitch to the minority vote, the African American vote, the Hispanic vote, which will be really prevalent today in Super Tuesday. A vote that she's winning over Bernie Sanders, and that in the general election, she would want to win over Donald Trump. So there's absolutely been strategy deployed here. As you said, she's very ahead in the delegate count. So instead of going after Bernie Sanders to repetitively she's going to start focusing on Donald Trump.
Very interesting. On the other hand, Mr. Andrews, since you are coming from the Republican background, let me ask you, there has been so much debate already within the the GOP establishment, talking about who has lost the race already at this stage because of the rise of Donald Trump. They say it was because of politics in the previous years going to one extreme, and therefore Donald Trump will be able to come out as almost like an independent in a way from the party establishment and just reunite the whole Republican Party with anger. Help us to understand what is your thought about it, looking at this phenomenon.
Well, as the gentleman said, Donald Trump has been able to bring in new voters into this primary process. It's actually quite amazing. In the primary process so far for the GOP, primary turnout is up 20%. And for Democrats, it's actually down 20% from the highs that President Barack Obama were able to achieve back in 2008. And so with the rhetoric that Donald Trump has used and with the tactics that he's used, with the messages that he sends, you know, a lot of those things are not good for the party. They're certainly not good for the nation and not things that we should support. However, the phenomenon of being able to pull in this new coalition that's coalescing around him is really incredible, and something that I believe other candidates that are currently in the race can take advantage of, and certainly something that the Republican Party can take advantage of in the fall. One area that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have not done well with is the youth vote. In 2016, for the first time ever, millennials are now 31% of the voting electorate in the United States, equaling that of baby boomers. The only bright spot for Bernie Sanders in South Carolina was the youth vote. And so whether candidates are running locally, statewide, or nationwide in 2016, candidates are going to have to speak to millennials in an authentic way, inspire us and get us out to vote if they intend to win.
Well,
when you look at minorities, 44% of the Hispanic voting electorate in the United States is millennial, and 35% of the African American voting electorate is millennial. And so if candidates want to be able to win going forward, especially those that are in second and third place now, they're going to have to take advantage.
Mr. Denham, of course, age groups are very important. A millennial, such as what Mr. Andrews keep on arguing about, could be important. But eventually, fundamentally, what do you think the competition is about? Which specific group, which specific idea, what kind of potential of America? What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, I think it's going to be two groups. If you assume, as Bill Clinton does, that this will be a close election, two key groups. One is blue-collar Democrats, so mostly men, mostly white, middle class, lower middle class. The former Democratic National Committee chairman, Ed Rendell, says, who's from Pennsylvania, where there are a lot of those voters, that the Democrats are going to lose some of those. They need to pick up suburban voters who are Republican-leaning, women with children, voters who have voted Republican in the past but are not hardcore Republicans. So I think that's going to be the key. It's going to be a lot of women who are independent to Republican leaning, and blue-collar men who are Democratic to independent.
I see. See who is going to switch their
exactly.
camp in a way. We talk about the Super Tuesday. The reason we talk about it, ladies and gentlemen, is because of its very significant day. It's likely to decide, at least when you look at the previous records, the fate of many of the candidates. If you take a look at past elections, significance of Super Tuesday for a candidate's success is, some say, clear. In 2000, for example, Republican George W. Bush and Democrat Al Gore cemented their nomination bids with Super Tuesday victories, and both went on to win their party's nomination. 2008 as well, Democratic races saw a tight battle as Barack Obama got 13 more delegates than his rival. And we talk about the Republican Party. Now let's focus a little bit more on the Democratic Party. Earlier, Ms. Schwartz, you mentioned about Ms. Clinton's campaign already looking at Mr. Trump as the next step, but still challenge coming from Bernie Sanders, the self-claimed socialist, is still there. What do you make of the current reality?
Well, I think, he spent a lot of money and time in about 5 states that'll be voting today. He does well in all white states with a large chunk of millennials. Minnesota may be a good example of that for him, winning and doing very well in today. Vermont, his home state, votes today. It'll be interesting to look to Massachusetts. Again, very white. Bernie Sanders demographic, if you will, if you generalize, but Hillary Clinton's been gaining on him there. So not only do I think it counts with the number of votes, but it counts with the number of delegates and where they're from. If she can do well in Massachusetts, I think that'll bode well for her campaign. As you mentioned, some Super Tuesdays are great victories for candidates. Other victories are very downplayed because there are many other elections coming up in the next few weeks. But as it stands now, Hillary Clinton has to realize, and I think she fully does, that Bernie Sanders has attracted a large chunk of the population who want to see an economic revolution. She feels very much the same way, but has plans of which that will pay for it. And as Rick just mentioned, she needs to go after, the Democrats. Absolutely, you keep them in the party.
Right.
There are some Republicans that'll just never vote for her, but it's those independents, and with the women in suburban Philly and all over the country talking about paid family and medical leave, higher minimum wage when it comes to blue collar, and women's rights, I think will really do very well in a general election. But right now, she's got to focus on continuing to win and be able to woo those Bernie Sanders voters over to her side when needed.
Right. Mr. Dunham, though, what do you think about the millennials? Are they, if Mr. Sanders is not likely to be the real one, are they going to switch their camp, or they're just going to give up because they feel disappointed that the one they are supporting is not getting the nomination? Well, we don't know yet, but many are suggesting in that direction.
Well, it's always possible that people who have come out for Sanders won't vote at all. There was a poll this week, 33% of Democrats who are voting in the primaries say that they will not vote for Hillary Clinton, but 48% of Republicans say they would not vote for Donald Trump. So what that means to me is both of the candidates, if they emerge as the candidates, have work to do to make sure that people who didn't vote for them in the primary show up in November. With Hillary Clinton, the biggest group is young voters, millennials, including women who are not connecting with her. And then also the white liberals, some who call themselves democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders.